Hey there gamers, Gaming Blitz here with another video. This time it's going to be a little different. We're going to do a video about tactics and maneuvers. This should hopefully help you learn a little more about certain maneuvers with planes you can pull and which planes do them best. But mostly it's going to help you with with fighting in battles. So you're either new to the game or you just come out of AB and you switch to RB. So you get your first couple planes, you start flying, mostly biplanes, they're all turners, so you train up as turning. Then you start getting a little further down the line and you start encountering different planes that do different things. Now you gotta learn how to fly each one and fight against each one. The most common thing is for a pilot is to instantly start throwing his plane to a horizontal turning. That is not the best idea, in fact that's probably the last maneuver you want to resort to because of the fact that when you turn, you bleed energy. And energy in planes is life. So, what other maneuvers can you do other than turning? Well, pretty much all of it comes down to speed and energy. There's basically three different type of fighting modes in this game. There's boom and zoom, energy fighting, and turn and burn. Turn and burn is pretty obvious, it's just turning with your enemy. Boom and zoom and energy fighting have some gray area between them. The way I define it is boom and zoom is essentially you have altitude over an enemy, you dive on them, you shoot at them, you pull out, and you just go straight back up to about the altitude you came from, and then level off and look back down at your enemy. Energy fighting is slightly different in that you're above the enemy generally, or you have energy over the enemy. You dive on them, you shoot at them, you pull up, and instead of just going up back to your altitude and leveling off, you trade that energy into altitude where you level off, or not even really level off, you just loop over, you dive back on them, and you use your energy advantage over them. What this does is keep them at bay where you have complete control over the battle. You choose when you fight, you choose when you leave. Your target has no choice of the fight, he is purely defensive. And so what he's going to be doing is putting every maneuver he can out of his plane to pretty much avoid your shots, and if he's a good pilot, he'll be looking for opportunities to get his shots on you, but we assume average pilot, so most likely he's just going to be just trying to survive. So using these three pillars of maneuvers as a basis, we start looking at all the different type of planes in War Thunder. And while not every plane is a turn and burner, all of them can boom and zoom and energy fight. Some of course do it better than others. Generally, the best ones for energy fighting are the ones that keep energy the best. And turn and burners are pretty obvious. You're basically, the best turn and burners are the British planes and the Japanese planes. Generally, I mean there's always exceptions, like if we look, N1Ks are not the best turners, J7W1, nowhere near a good turner. But A6Ms, even the Ki 43s, even the Ki 61s are okay turning. They get outturned by other planes, mostly British, but so when you're flying a British plane, basically Spitfires, even the Typhoon, Hurricanes, you know you have turning to fall back on. But again, you can always energy fight, and these planes are actually very good energy fighters as well. So to generalize every line, it basically follows this. The Americans are, I'm going to say, they're a little more on the energy fighting side and boom and zoom side, but they're more of all-rounders. It really depends on the enemies you're facing, but generally, if you go energy fighting with these things, you're always good. The downside to American planes is they don't climb well, and energy fighting really does require altitude. The Germans, on the other hand, are pure boom and zoom and energy fighters. There's not really any plane here you could say, oh, that thing's a turn fighter. There are planes that can turn, like the 109E3, like I talked about in a previous video, but none of them really turn well, and none of them can rely on turning as a maneuver to get them the advantage. So they are pure energy fighters. The Russians are the pure all-rounders. The Americans are more leaning towards energy fighting, but these are pure all-rounders. They can turn with half the planes in the game, and they cannot turn with the other half. They climb okay. Their engine performance, even though it should not be good at high altitude, are good at high altitude. They just overall can be used for energy fighting and turn and burn just as effectively. British, like I said earlier, are very good at turning. Spitfires are well renowned for their turning, and they also do climb well, extremely well. So you can always rely on energy fighting to pretty much have your fight as an energy fighter, and then later on as the fight progressed with your opponent, if he's still surviving that long, you can switch to turning and out-turn him. And the Japanese, like I also said earlier, are mostly turn fighters. So that's enough of talking in theory. Let's go to some actual replays I have to show you all these different type of maneuvers. So I'm here in the Focke-Wulf A4. I've climbed up, which is probably the best tactic you'll always use, is altitude is life. I start diving on this other P-63, but I notice this other one who is at higher altitude, and a good tactic is always to work from the person who's the highest down to the person who's the lowest. So when you dive, you don't end up below enemies. So I go at this P-63, I try to make a little attack on him, no good. So then, here the big thing is I trade all that energy I just made in that dive, and I go straight on up. He has just made a U-turn. The turn led his speed, and then he dove a little bit to build up that speed, probably a loss, but now he's coming up to me. He has no chance of meeting that altitude. I reach the top of my turn, I dive down. He is shooting erratically, but he's got no chance of hitting me. He stalls out, presents a flat angle, I get on him. This type of maneuver is known as the hammerhead, which is a very useful one to use when you have an enemy who you know is low on speed. So the next one, a little bit different. I am now being chased by P-51. I put my plane's superior engine power to try to use that as more as my advantage, but it's not going to work out because I've already taken a little bit of damage. So I pull up. I start using my plane's engine, who I know has a better engine. But the biggest thing is I start rolling. This is actually something most people just don't understand, is how well a roll can actually play in a game. With that roll and cutting the engine, I now end up behind him. We're both stalling, but I'm now behind him. As he passes right in front of me, I try to get the shot. No luck for that. Again, the roll. I'm able to roll into position. I get some hits. He's now scared out of his mind. Now, although my plane can not turn anywhere near like him, I do follow him in the turn because there is not much other option here. And this is probably something you need to be knowing. I turn my nose, and I get the kill. This is a different type of maneuver. This is more using your roll and speed capabilities to outmaneuver an enemy with a less maneuverable plane. It still can be done. Maneuvers are not just limited to elevators. Ailerons make a big change. The fact that you can outroll an enemy changes the whole thing, and then speed also governs it. So another very common, very well used tactic is diving on the enemy. This is probably the boom and zoom. This is probably the best example I can give for you that involves no energy fighting. So you want to make sure when someone's on the deck like this, you don't want to be going too fast, because when you dive on them, you will not have the altitude to pull away. So you either have to be going very slow, or you have to have a wider attack angle. I elect to get kind of both, not going too fast, but not going too slow. And this is what I mean by a wider attack angle. You're not directly vertically above them. Get the hits and the kill. By not being directly above them does not mean when you pass by them, you're not going straight down. So, next replay in a Spitfire now. A great turn fighter, but we're going to use this one for energy fighting. So, there's a P-51 down low. I start diving on him. Now, of course, other planes you need to realize, like Spitfire, is they'll actually rip on high G turns. Generally, War Thunder has a barrier around 600 kph. So, I do turn with him, but I'm not going to follow through with the turn. I hit him, I don't get the hits, I trade that energy back up in speed. I do not trade that energy into a turn just to go with him. Because I'm actually going faster than him, believe it or not, he will actually outturn me for a short amount of time. And which I probably could still kill him anyway, but this is a much more efficient way. So, he sees I gone up, he pulls his nose up to get me, but he knows he does not have any speed to get me. He still tries it anyway. And just like in the Focke-Wulf, he gets up, gets greedy, tries to get the shot, can't get the shot. I'm now behind him, I got energy over him. I dictate the terms of the battle. Pull the lead, crit, shot again, fireball. And that's it. That's how you fight with a energy fighting. So let's see what happens with maneuverable planes. So here we are in the A6M2 now versus Spitfires. Now these two planes, Spitfire's got much better energy retention than I do. I got much better turn. Spitfire. Both me and the Spitfire actually do roll the same at a very slow roll rate, unfortunately. So I'm tracking 2 Spitfires who actually are squatted up in the clouds, and this is another perfect tactic to use. Use the clouds. In this current patch, cloud spotting is much more realistic than it used to be, where you have to be very close to the enemy to see them in dense clouds. So that's what I do here. And I'm just trying to follow through, trying to get that shot, get a couple hits, and since I passed over him, I've overshot. I now trade all that energy I have it back into altitude, and I roll over. This is maneuverable planes using energy fighting to a certain degree. Because I'm slow, I can't afford to go straight up and go back down. I'm going to lose them instantly. Now, unfortunately, I do shoot a little erratically here. Have a little trouble getting the aim. I'm just very paranoid by this point, and I don't get the shot. Instead of following this guy down, I, again, get a little bit of altitude, roll over, fly above. The fact that you're above, again, dictates the terms of the combat. If he was to pull up and try to come to me, I can engage him at will. I could avoid him at will. I could just put my plane straight up, and he cannot get me. Now his wingman's also diving. So roll over, see if I can roll on top of him. I won't be able to though, because unfortunately the Zero is much slower than a Spitfire. Do fire some 7.7s to get the trio, to get the lead. So again, if you notice something, with each clip I'm always looking at the team list. That's something that's very important, because one, it lets you know who's left alive on not only your team, but the enemy team. It shows you if someone's got more kills. It shows they're probably a much more high priority target because they know more what they're doing. And the scorecard actually is a very good thing to tell. Someone who has a high score or a score that keeps on increasing means that he's actively engaging a friendly. It could be an AI friendly on the ground, or like artillery piece on the ground, or it could be a plane. If he's doesn't have much of a score or any score, it might mean he's up high. And as you saw with that friendly A6M3 over there, don't do head-ons. The number one tactic you should never do is head-ons. Unless you absolutely can't help it. The first pass on an enemy should never be a head-on. Rarely ever should it be ever head-on. Because what you can do is always, if you need to take a head-on in the situation, you pass him, you pull some distance, you turn, and then you head-on him. You should always try to find another maneuver to beat the head-on, because in a head-on, he has an equal chance of hitting you as you do him. And you never want that. You want a chance where you're going to hit him and he's never going to hit you, which is optimally not in front of him. So with this one, pulling speed all the way, going to dive on him, and AAA is still another broken thing in this game with how flak should never be opening up at, 150 meters off the ground. Flak was never used for that. Now this Spitfire is doing a good maneuver, which is another very good tactic. It's flying to a teammate. Because aside from you outmaneuvering an enemy, the only other way to get an enemy off your tail is with a friendly. Now unfortunately for him, his friendly is bad as can be. And there's the Typhoon friendly that he went after. And he knows he's not going to be able to outrun me. He starts pulling it up into a maneuver, and again, instead of turning with him, I just cut inside his turn, hit it, and kill him. Now, this Typhoon has energy over me. So, as you see with me, I am calling out to my team, letting them know that. And that's another very important thing, is team play. I know it's a multiplayer game. You're never going to see friendlies that are always good, but if you're a team player, that means there's one person on your team that is a team player. And right here, you can outmaneuver an enemy by just with a more maneuverable plane, just turn inside the turn. I cut inside his turn, I roll up and over, do basically a yo-yo, pull it straight up. I'm out of cannons now, if you notice. And I maneuver on this guy just to fire 7.7s, and he bails out. He bails out on a guy who's got only 7.7s. That is the stupidest move you can ever do. Never bail out. So that's it for the replays. The most important thing to take away from what I've been showing that I have not actually said at all, I kind of hinted towards, is situational awareness. You need to understand what's going on around you. You don't need to truly know everything around you, but you need to always make sure your 6 is clear. You need to make sure you know where your enemies are. You got to know what you gotta guess what altitude they're at. You can't always know, but through team information, maybe you see a scorecard of an enemy guy and a teammate going up, which shows that they're both engaging each other, and you could probably look around the map, see where that friendly is, so you know where that enemy is. And just looking at the scores, people who have a lower score generally could be higher altitude, and you don't want to be below an enemy. So basically the biggest thing is always have altitude over your enemy, and that's why you climb. That's why you generally see people who are lower altitude dying early in the match, because they don't climb. They think, you know, it's stupid to climb, but it's not. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you guys do like these type of tactics video, please do let me know. I do enjoy making them. If you like the video, do click the like button down below. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the skies.